moment of truth is really really incredible. And so I was just going to ask first, can you talk a little about what drew you to the project and how you became its executive producer?
Sure. So Capital Broadcasting Company produced Moment of Truth in partnership with Bow and Arrow Entertainment, and Capital Broadcasting is the company I work for, and I've been there for 33 years. I almost lost count. So I knew about this story from 1993 when it occurred. Actually grew up in North Carolina, went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, followed Michael Jordan's career. So there was a lot of entry points into this story. And our team just started looking at it newly around the 25th anniversary of the murder. And the 25th anniversary would have been in 2018. We began the project at that point.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I'm a North Carolina boy as well. I'm from South Florida, but I'm out here in North Carolina. My father's in Morrisville. I went to Duke, so don't
No, no, I'm not going to be hating on Duke. Absolutely not. Some people will, but I will not.
But yeah, no, as you said, this is of course a social and cultural and political moment that almost anyone who is tied to North Carolina or basketball or just Michael Jordan in general are aware of. And just thinking about the series, what were some of the steps that you wanted to make sure were taken to make sure that this series wouldn't exploit any parties or sensationalize any elements of this? Because the moment it happened, there was a lot of exploitation, a lot of sensational media that followed this, and it's still, of course, very sensitive. And so, thinking about that, how did you approach this project as a whole?
Our team had a core commitment to tell the story with humanity, number one, for everyone involved, and empathy and compassion for what happened. Obviously, a horrific tragedy for the Jordan family, but there are a lot of other families involved. And so ultimately, we wanted to make sure that we were telling the entire story, not just retelling the story that was sort of neatly packaged back when it happened. And as you said, there was a lot of mystery around it. There was a lot of conspiracy theories flying around. And we wanted to address all of that and sort of for all at once kind of say, this is the whole thing, and re-examine it really newly.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there were a lot of films and television shows that looked at this incident, and most recently we had The Last Dance that also covered a lot of this moment in Jordan's life. And I know you talk about how much you followed Jordan as well, and this going on in his life. But how much of this was new to you? How much of this was how much of this project was a discovery where you came into it expecting one thing, but a lot of the information was new for you?
Well, as a person who grew up in North Carolina and was present and was a young photojournalist at the time the murder occurred at the station at WRL-TV, who covered this extensively, I sort of lived through the trial. And when we went back and sort of took the trial apart and put the trial back together, it was not I didn't remember it that way. And I think what viewers will see is that there was an investigation and a trial that was presented. And then there was a lot of things that were known at the time of the trial that the jury never heard. And I think those things are very key in, would the same result have occurred if all of that had been allowed into evidence and into the trial? So for one, I think a discovery for me was that the trial was not what I thought, having lived through it. And then I think the second part of discovery was when the North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence and the executive director there, Chris Muma, who took on Daniel's case, when they got involved, it got very interesting in that, Daniel Green has maintained his innocence in the murder from the very beginning and has filed motion upon motion upon motion for to get an appeal. And really, when Chris Muma and her organization got involved, people got very interested in what he was saying all of a sudden, because they don't take just every case. I think she told me they get 1,200 cases presented to them, and they take a handful, and they don't take a case unless they see something egregious. And so when they got involved in 2016, and then the 25th anniversary was coming in 2018, kind of the culmination of all of that, we said, we really need to look at this whole thing again, because there is more here than what was reported in, all these years.
And it's a totally different time, with the access we have to technology, a lot more information is made available, and a lot more folks have access to that information. And unfortunately, that does give way to things like conspiracy theories and people making, really large leaps and bounds. But it's incredible to consider that after so long, that there are people who are willing to examine this case from a different angle, from a different lens, and a necessary lens, because this isn't just a story about the victim, the family, the accused, but also the system and the flaws in this system, right? So I know this docuseries is a first for the company to be released worldwide, and I was just wondering, what are some insights or impressions you hope audiences can take away from this, who are probably not from the North Carolina area and who are probably just now seeing how deeply flawed the criminal justice system can be?
Well, I think last year's cultural conversations and the racial reckoning of our country opened a lot of people's eyes that things have been broken for a really long time. And the Black community and the Black America has had a completely different experience than white America. And so I think a piece of this is that what makes this story so relevant right now is that was happening in 1993 and 94, 95, 96, when this whole thing was happening. And in some ways, things haven't changed that much. That's a sobering kind of thought. We hope by bringing light to this case, and we know there are many, many, many other cases that have questions, that we're part of the solution of, listen, we need to, all of us, take an open view of our justice system and really ask ourselves if justice is equal for everybody. I think one of the things that was kind of most revealing to me personally, just in a self-reflection way, is, do people who do not have the means for the best attorneys in the world get the same justice as people who do? I think the answer to that is no.
And I think you touch on all of the points that resonate now and that resonate in the 90s. I'm a 90s baby. I grew up through the news of the LA riots and a lot of the economic and social injustices that still pervade neighborhoods there today. But there are two justice systems, and we've seen that, and there have been a lot of high profile cases that show that. This docuseries in particular. How much insight did or input did the Jordan family provide, if any, for this series, considering like how deeply, again, their lives are being looked at and explored and their personal goings on? It seems like it must be exhausting to revisit this event so frequently, and again, it we don't know when a clear answer, some kind of closure will come.
Yeah, we did reach out to Michael Jordan and a couple times in this process, and he declined to participate, be interviewed through his spokespeople, and we certainly completely respect that decision. We do not. I can't imagine losing a family member in that way, and I have great empathy and compassion for what the family has, I'm sure, been through. So, what we tried to do is we tried to bring all of the people who were impacted and all of the people who were involved back into the story. I don't know if the Jordan family will watch. I hope they will, as difficult as that would be, because I actually think they also deserve to know what happened. And I, I don't know that the facts that they have are everything.
And again, the series looks at it from an angle that we haven't really gotten to see in a while. Robeson County and its mishandling of just so much, and so much of their ineptitude, and um, the criminal justice, or rather criminal injustices that are happening in their system. This docu series really sheds a light on. Um, what were some of your team's greatest challenges going into this, either going into it or during filming or even in post, that you folks were like, oh man, this could potentially hang up more than we thought?
Well, I think as a company, WRL TV, and that's all of the archives that we use came from WRL, the reporting archives, many of them, and we had covered Robertson County forever, you know, um, and so we had that history of that deep history of corruption before and after the crime. And so we wanted to, it's so important where this crime happened, because I think it's really a huge part of the narrative and how things played out, both in the investigation and the trial and afterwards. But we want to be responsible in the way that we do that, right? And we really took a journalistic approach to the series, and everyone who's involved in it has that journalistic baseline, and it was important to us to have a factual understanding of all of the different parties who were involved. And ultimately, I think the jury now is the public. It's the viewer. It's you. It's whoever watches the series to have an opinion about. Here's what I think happened. You know, and that's why we called it Moment of Truth. There are several moments of truth, I think, in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that's a question. What is the truth? And this was a deep journey to try to find the truth and whether correct justice occurred.
Right, right. And it's a much more informed audience that's getting to watch this now, at least, especially those who lived through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you hoping those folks are able to take away something new? Because I'm sure there are folks who grew up uh, watching this case unfold, set their minds on what they thought the outcome really was.
Yeah, I hope those who know the story or think they know the story will watch it with fresh, open eyes. I think there's a whole lot of people who don't even know this even happened. People who Michael Jordan is his legacy is long, and so even
Mm-hmm.
people who, you know, I went to college at UNC a couple years after Michael went through, so we're about the same age. There's a lot of people a lot younger than me who maybe don't really know this happened. Maybe they saw it in another, they've heard about it, but
Mm-hmm.
they've heard a narrative, and that narrative is actually not the true narrative, right? So I hope that people who think they know this story will watch it newly and open themselves to it might not be what they thought.
And a lot of what you said reminded me of growing up myself, and then going to college and hearing about this but not knowing. So it was one thing to hear what had gone on, but to know the details. I would say I only came into contact with like legitimate details only recently, like a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of it came from misinformation and folks who really didn't know what was going on. But your series provides a lot more insight, a lot more necessary insight that I think will show folks again a lot of the pitfalls of this system, a lot of the pitfalls that need addressing. Um, Before I let you go, Shelly, is this a topic or an area you'd like to explore in the future some more, or was this something that you felt compelled to do in this instance because of, again, closeness to home?
You know, I think it started as that, this closeness to home and the connection that we had to the story. And as in this 2.5 year process of living this case, and then the events of last year, all of that kind of, you know, are coming together to make me think, listen, there's a wrongful conviction, innocence, questionable, investigating, excuse me, all of those things have been happening for so long. And I unfortunately think there are a lot of these stories that could be told. One of the reasons we called it Moment of Truth is also that there may be another season. Certainly, if something happens in this case, that new action is taken, whether there's a new trial or a hearing or whatever, we will be documenting that, and hopefully be updating the series. So yes, to your question, I think it actually opened me to what can I do to make the system better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anybody who has a platform, I don't know, I feel like has a responsibility to be part of the change. Sounds cliche, but I actually feel that.
No, not cliche at all. I mean, absolutely necessary, and again, really moving and important work, and work that I do hope continues, and I do hope folks get to learn from. Shelly, thank you so much for spending some time to talk to me, and I look forward to your work in the future, and really
Thank you.
hope we get to talk again about this series.
Thank you so much, Jamal. I really appreciate the opportunity and to meet you, and thank you for your kind words about our work.
Thank you again.
All right.